Welcome to Real Possibilities with AARP Connecticut. I'm Elaine Werner. I'm your host for today's show. I am on staff with the AARP Connecticut nonprofit statewide office. We come to you in your local community with AARP's purpose in mind, and that is to empower you to choose how you live as you age. We are going to certainly do that today with the title of our program, The Power of the 50-Plus Voter. Don't go away if you're under the age of 50, because we're going to give you a little tutorial on the voting process. We're going to let you know about AARP's nonpartisan work in an election year and empower you to access voting in a safe way and give you some information just about all the aspects of voting and in Connecticut and some things federally as well. So stay tuned for that. The show again is The Power of the 50-Plus Voter, but again with details for any age. We like to bring the experts to our show, and I'm doing that today with my colleague, John Erlinghaus. Welcome, John. Hey, John. Nice to have you finally on the show after a couple of years. Here you are. So John is on staff also with the AARP Connecticut nonprofit office. John is the Associate State Director for Advocacy and Outreach. And John has been working for many, many years with AARP Connecticut on educating you as a viewer, possibly as a member of AARP, informing you on issues that are important to you, the 50-plus population, and how you can become a more informed voter. So, John, before we get to the details here, if you can just let our viewers know, as Associate State Director for Advocacy and Outreach, what exactly is that role at AARP Connecticut?
Great. Yep. And thanks. Nice to be with you today, Elaine, and to be on the program and share some of our information with the public. I've been with AARP 17 years, and I do mostly advocacy and community outreach work, focusing mainly on areas that deal with economic and financial security and resiliency, issues around taxation, savings, pensions, also all federal issues in the office in Connecticut for AARP. And I also coordinate our education efforts and advocacy around elections. And that's a very important aspect of what we do. And it's that time of year again, and it's a big year being the presidential election. So we're in full speed ahead.
Great. And we appreciate your expertise today, John. And depending on when you're watching this show, we are taping this program, The Power of the 50-Plus Voter, in July of 2020. So we're going to be talking about some things that are specific to this time period, but we will give you a lot of details that you can apply to any election year and surrounding voting. John, I mentioned in my intro the nonpartisan status of AARP. Can you tell our viewer, what does that mean? Why is AARP non-status, and how does that impact the work that we do?
Well, so AARP, as you mentioned in your opening, is a nonprofit. We're a 501c4, and we are not allowed to engage in partisan political activities, but we are allowed to engage in voter education and advocacy and lobbying. So unlike a lot of organizations that do the same thing, we're not allowed to have, and we do not have, a PAC. We don't make political contributions to any candidates or to any political parties. We make absolutely no political endorsements of candidates for office. We're strictly nonpartisan. We do advocate for issues, though, so it's important for us to engage not only legislators and elected officials at the Capitol and in the town halls across the state, but it's important for us to advocate our issues to all the candidates running for office with the objective of them knowing where our members stand on the important issues of the day, whether it's around nursing homes or high utility rates or adequate savings for retirement, so that no matter who wins, they're on the side of our members. And that's important because, as you mentioned, the power of the 50-plus voter, our members are the most important voting segment in the elections and generally have more influence over who wins an election at any given time. So it's important for us to maintain that nonpartisan status. It also allows us to have greater credibility with policymakers because we're not really in one camp or the other. We're on the side of our members, and not only our members, but the public in general, on good public policy.
Great. So the operative words, John, are nonpartisan, issue-oriented when it comes to AARP nationally and AARP Connecticut.
Correct. So we're very political. People have trouble differentiating from being political and being partisan. You can't be involved in advocacy and in education around elections and issues without being political. That politics isn't a dirty word. Partisanship is a far different thing. So taking one candidate over another and endorsing them, or taking one party's point of view over another, that's a far different cry from being a political. So we're issue oriented, and we're about our members and the 50 plus voter, but we do not make endorsements. We're not in one partisan camp or the other.
Great. I'm glad you clarified that, John. And again, the title of the show, The Power of the 50 plus voter. The impact of the 50 plus voter is great. There's some real distinctions about the older voter, and don't go away again if you're younger than 50 years old. Lots to learn here at any age. But John, if you can address the distinction, the habits maybe of the 50 plus voter, and also keeping in mind, as of the taping of this program, Connecticut is the 7th oldest state in the country, meaning age-wise. We are right up there, literally, in age of our citizens.
Yeah, I mean, the 50 plus voter generally is one of the voting segments that turns out in the greatest numbers in any given election. And, usually something like 40% of any electorate that votes in any given election are members of AARP. And as you like to point out, our membership is age 50 and older. So it's a very important segment because, they do pay attention. They're generally more informed, and they do turn out and vote. So candidates for office generally like to pay attention to the issues that matter to them, because they're generally the segment that determines the outcome of elections. So every voting segment is important, and AARP takes the position that we want to encourage everybody, no matter what age you are, to exercise your franchise and be informed, not only on what the issues are in an election, but also in what the process for voting is, and particularly in the age of COVID, knowing how to do that in a safe and effective way to make sure that you're not putting your health at risk or the health of any of your friends, neighbors, and relatives at risk as well. So this is an important year, and it's going to be a little bit different than other years, but we're gonna do what we can to ensure that not only the 50 plus voter, but all voters get to properly exercise their franchise in this cycle.
Well, and John, that was the perfect segue, because I want to get right into absentee and mail-in voting. And we're going to put up on the screen right now a message that AARP has, particularly during these times. Again, the taping is July of 2020, but every vote counts. So should every voter's safety. And John, absentee balloting, existed prior to the time of a pandemic. There are specific rules in Connecticut about absentee voting. So again, if you could inform our viewer, what are those rules, let's say pre-COVID? Why is AARP particularly involved in, we're always involved in the safety, certainly of the voter, but it's risen to a distinctive priority right now, given the pandemic. So if you can just go through the absentee process pre and currently and maybe future.
Sure. So let me start off by saying, in the age of COVID-19, we're not suggesting that anybody who wants to vote in person shouldn't be able to have the right to vote in person, but also having the right to do that in a safe and effective and careful way, as to not put their health at risk, put the health of their friends, neighbors, and relatives at risk, and also those that are going to go out and be on the front lines and actually work for very little pay and very long hours at polling places across the state of Connecticut. So that I want to start off by saying that. Now, having said that, prior to the COVID crisis, Connecticut had and has one of the most restrictive absentee balloting processes in the country. We actually have both constitutional language that limits how and why you can vote absentee balloting, and we also have statutory languages that does the same thing. And now the irony is, our state statutes are a lot more restrictive than the language in the Constitution that we need statutes to implement. And so prior to the COVID crisis, and just I should remark, I was a registrar of voters in a municipality in Connecticut for 16 years. So I've dealt with absentee ballots and I know the process. So this isn't just AARP knowledge, this is real hand knowledge. You had to have just a very limited number of reasons as to why you could vote in absentia. And those are things such as serving in the military, working in a polling location as an employee that's different from the polling location you work in, because you have to be at the polling location from an hour before the time the polls open to sometimes an hour or more after the polls close. So that means you wouldn't be able to get out and go vote. In a nursing home or a convalescent home, you became ill several days or a couple of weeks prior to the election and unable to get out of your home, or you're out of the town for the entire hours of operation of the polls. So that doesn't mean, well, it's inconvenient, I don't want to take a half hour to go vote. It means, you leave work to go out of your town before the polls open and you don't get back until after the polls close. So if you're in town under the state statutes, any amount of time during those hours, you're supposed to have to vote in person. Well, that's certainly just not practical. I mean, illness, is all kind of a determinative thing. And so what we're concerned about is people having to risk getting illness in order to go vote in person. And that doesn't mean just the older voter, because there's a lot of talk by politicians saying, well, we're worried about older voter safety going to the polls, and this should really only be concerning older voters. Well, it's just as important for those voters under the age of 50. Because if, your 25-year-old child goes into the polling location and touches a dirty pen or dirty polling location, a privacy booth, a door handle going in and out of the location, and somehow contracts corona and then brings it home to their aunt or uncle or grandparent who has conditions that make them more susceptible to corona, we've achieved nothing. So we want to ensure that everybody, and as many people as they feel as practical, have the ability to vote absentee ballot. So we're pretty lucky. We worked with the Governor Lamont and the administration, as well as Secretary of State Denise Merrill and other interested parties, in getting the governor to issue an executive order for the August 11th primaries for both president and any other offices in the state of Connecticut that have a primary, saying that COVID-19 is enough of an excuse for illness, not necessarily having to contract it, but the fear of getting it is enough of a reason as to not voting in person. And, that's a far change from the past. I mean, many people probably have unintentionally been requesting and getting and voting absentee ballot in the past, not realizing that they probably shouldn't be. So now what the Secretary of State did is got federal money from the CARES Act that was going to allow her to mail out applications to vote absentee ballot to every registered Democrat and Republican in the state, because remember, Connecticut is a closed primary. Mm-hmm. If you're not registered with one of the two major parties, you cannot vote in the primary, and you can only vote in the primary of the party with which you're registered. The Democrats and the Democratic, Republicans and the Republican, we're one of the only states that still is that restrictive. And then you fill out an application, and if it's because of your fear of COVID, there's a new box you check for that. You mail it in a self-addressed stamped envelope, and then the registrars in your local towns will mail you a ballot, and you have one of two options: filling it out, mailing it back in, or the same federal funding has allowed for a secure ballot drop box. Almost looks like one of the old style post office mailboxes, and you can drop that ballot securely in that location so that you don't have to encounter anybody, and then the elections officials take it from there. So we've created a safe and secure process to allow for this expanded absentee ballot voting. And I'm quite confident we're going to see a record turnout in this primary, and it's going to be done in a safe way. And it's going to also be done in a way that will demonstrate how efficient, safe, and secure this process actually is absentee voting in Connecticut, because it's very restrictive. I mean, if you'd like, I could go into a little bit about that, because you have to fill out an application and sign it and swear and make an testament to the fact that you are who you are. Mm-hmm. You get your ballot mailed to you. You have to sign 2 different components of that ballot, swearing you are who you are, mailing it in. There's an inner envelope that gets signed, and then an outer envelope that gets signed. And, it gets mailed back, and it's very secure. In fact, I will say honestly, in my 16 years of running elections, or my time at AARP, I never really saw any fraud in voting absentee balloting, other than people mistakenly requesting an absentee ballot that they weren't legally entitled to get. Now, that doesn't mean, their vote was fraudulent. It means, they probably shouldn't have gotten the absentee ballot, but they only voted once. It was their vote. They cast it, and it was counted. So there's this big misconception about what it means to vote absentee. And it's a really secure, safe, and honest process. And I would encourage as many people to take advantage of that process for the August primaries, August 11th, as possible. After August, we're also hoping in the month of July to get the legislature to extend that same process for the November 3rd presidential and statewide elections as well.
And John, very thorough and comprehensive. Appreciate that for our viewer. And of course, even after the November election, the future is sort of unknown with the pandemic as we are taping the show. So many of what the items you're talking about could apply going into other years as well. We're going to put up on the screen again the message from AARP, which is every vote counts, so should every voter's safety, which John has just very clearly addressed. John, we're also going to put up the Secretary of the State's website, and then AARP also has a great website. And it's you can go to arp.org/CT. Lots of great stuff there, information. But how to vote in the Connecticut primary elections. We'll also be posting that website as well. And John, as you've sort of touched on, it can be controversial with some people about absentee balloting, about security and safety. And you've said you feel strongly that it is very safe. But in other states that have been doing this prior to a pandemic, with your knowledge, how has absentee voting gone? Has it been safe? Has it been secure and a good system?
So, I mean, in state, so let's take a step back. There are states that do all mail-in balloting, which is different from expanded absentee balloting. So in Connecticut, we're talking about expanded absentee balloting. It's a 2-step process. It's very thorough, and it's very safe and honest. In other states, it's gone fairly well. States that have a lot of experience with a high volume of absentee ballots or no excuse mail-in voting, it's gone fairly well. Where there have been problems are in states that there have been a lot of restrictions on absentee balloting, but also at the same time, really trimmed down your ability to vote in person. So a lot of the stuff you're seeing is, with people waiting in long lines to vote in person, are states that didn't really have expanded absentee voting in the safe way and secure way in with which Connecticut is going to do it. But also really just for financial reasons and for other reasons, eliminated a great number of polling locations. So, I'm very happy to say in Connecticut, you're going to vote with the same complement of polling locations if you choose to vote in person as opposed to an absentee balloting. And the Secretary of State's investing a significant amount of money and resources and planning into making sure the voting experience in the polling place, if you so choose to do that, is safe. So mask requirements, hand sanitizers, proper social distancing, constant monitoring and sanitizing of the equipment, all of those things. So I would say, Connecticut is really doing a good job because we have a strict process to begin with, and with all of the support and the dedication that the Secretary of State, Denise Merrill, is putting into it, we're going to have one of the, I believe, most secure and safe systems, be it voting by absentee balloting or in person. But once again, I would say take advantage of the opportunity to vote absentee ballot, because the postage is paid, or you could drop it off in those secure mailboxes at the town halls in your towns, and then you could really have a peace of mind. And I would say you should not worry in the slightest about your vote being cast and being counted. It will be counted, and all you have to do is follow the directions, which are not that complicated, on both the application and on the ballot. And by the way,
yes,
if you don't get an application mailed to you, you can go to the Secretary of State's website, request one. Okay. Or you could just vote in person if that's what you so choose. Be sure to wear a mask, be sure to use hand sanitizer, be sure to properly social distance.
Well, and we always stress at AARP to whatever activities to maintain, whatever are the CDC's guidelines and the state guidelines for your health and your safety. Again, every vote counts, so should every voter's safety. John just said if you don't get an absentee ballot, you can go to the Secretary of State's website. We're going to put that up as well. If you've just tuned in, you're watching Real Possibilities with AARP Connecticut. The subject of today's show has to do with the power of the 50-plus voter, but don't go away if you're younger, as stated, because I've asked John to do a quick tutorial on how things work in Connecticut, the Connecticut General Assembly. Who are they? How often are they elected? Who are the constitutional officers?
Yeah, so, this is an interesting year in Connecticut because we actually, other than for the office of president and vice president, which run tandem, we have no statewide offices up for election in Connecticut. No U.S. senators are up for election this year, and they run staggered 6-year terms. There are no U.S. Senate elections on the ballot. There is no statewide constitutional officer on the ballot this year. Governor, lieutenant governor, they run tandem. Secretary of State, Attorney General, Treasurer, and State Comptroller. They're not on the ballot in this election cycle. So the only offices that will be on the ballot in Connecticut this November are the office of president, your United States congressman in the 5 congressional districts, and then all of your state legislators. So all of the state senators, all of the state representatives, and then in some districts, there'll be judges of probate, registrars of voters, and some minor offices like that, but not in all. But in all districts, all the congressional offices, all 5 members of Congress are up for election, as well as all state legislators and all state senators. So those are who are on the ballot in November, and some of those will be on the ballot for the August 11th primary, not all. I know I live in the 17th State Senate District here in Connecticut, and for the challenger to the incumbent senator, there is a primary. So if you're in the Democratic Party in my district, you would have a primary along with the presidential primary come August 11th, but it's not in every district.
Gotcha. Good information, John. And also, if you want to become active, John and I, of course, are always recruiting, developing, supporting volunteers. But one way to do it from the comfort of your own home right now is to become an e-activist. We're going to put up on the screen how you become that. You're going to go to aarp.org. You'll scroll to the bottom. It'll say Take Action. And then there's a section that says Be an e-advocate. And when you sign up for that, you'll receive AARP advocacy information, email action alerts, and issues that you personally care about. So very briefly, John, what kind of alerts will people receive, and why is it important for them to sign up for this?
Well, I mean, it's important for multiples of reasons. So there are both advocacy action steps that they'll be asked to take if they so choose, like we're asking our members to contact legislators and the governor now to extend the right to have expanded absentee ballot voting in November. And, they listen to us, I said, to our members, because we go back to the beginning of the program, our members and the 50-plus voter votes. But we'll also get information so that you can be even more informed. Like when we have telephone town halls, we're having one that we'll be doing before the primary to educate our members and the public about this whole process of voting in a pandemic. And we're doing that in conjunction with the League of Women Voters. And we're going to do it again for the November elections with the Secretary of State's office. So you learn about those activities. You also learn about the fun things that we do as well. Sometimes it's, we call it fun with purpose, where we've worked on an issue, whether it's utilities or retirement savings, and we have fun events out in the public. But we can't do those events out in the public now, but we've found creative ways of having fun with them in the Zoom or Microsoft Teams or the Skype setting. So there's all kinds of ways that you can get involved in this process. As a volunteer working on advocacy, if you want to even take that kind of step, you could participate in virtual meetings that members people running to be members of the legislature or Congress have. And, you get on there and you advocate as an AARP volunteer for issues. So there's all kinds of things we could do. It's not the traditional world, but we're making use of all of the tools at our disposal to flex the muscle of that 50-plus voter.
And if you are interested in advocacy volunteering with AARP Connecticut, you can seek out John directly. His information will be on the screen, but he can be reached at 860-548-3165. You can contact me directly, Elaine Warner, Program Specialist, Volunteer Engagement, 860-548-3169. And year-round, John mentioned the Fun with Purpose events. They go on almost every week, literally, sometimes multiple times. In a week, there is a plethora of activities to choose from. AARP.org/CT. John, believe it or not, time's up with our program, and we could have gone on easily for another half an hour in educating our voter. But do seek us out if you want more information. John, it's been a pleasure to finally get you on the program. You've got some great knowledge, 17 years as the Associate State Director for Advocacy and Outreach with AARP. He brings his experience from the community, aside from that, to the voting process. John, a pleasure. Thanks so much. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks to Win TV.
Thank you, John. And Win TV is the producing station of this show. We want to thank you if you are a member of AARP. You are joining one of 600,000 in the state of Connecticut, and we so appreciate that. So as per our message throughout the entire show, every vote counts. So should every voter's safety. So don't forget to vote whatever year it is. Please do that. And we'll come back and visit you in your local community with real possibilities with AARP Connecticut. Thanks for watching.